the lace tablecloth, and the patterns of memory. My mother came from Italy, and she brought with her a trunk full of linens she had embroidered or appliqued, lace she had crocheted into tablecloths and dresser scarves. My mother packed them in a large metal trunk, and each year added sheets she bought with pennies saved from her 25 cents an hour job in the factories of Paterson.
Maria Mazziotti Gillan's poems speak powerfully of her own experience, but this was something she didn't know how to do when she was first starting out.
It took me a while because first, I was in graduate school. I was majoring in literature. I thought I had to be very esoteric. I thought I had to mention Greek gods. I thought I had to have all this very intellectual, because I had to prove I wasn't just a kid who didn't speak English from a lower class house where we didn't have any money. The house was heated by a coal stove. And that was my image of myself as this little foreign kid. And then when my first book was published, a graduate school professor said to me, in this poem about your father, you find this story you have to tell. I was 40, and suddenly a light goes off in my head. I thought, maybe people might be interested in the stories of a wife, a mother, a daughter, a granddaughter, a child of immigrants.
Over the years, Maria's poems have become a kind of extended memoir. They speak of her past, but they resonate with others.
People write to me from all over the country. I really miss Garrison Keillor because he read a lot of my poems on the Writer's Almanac, and then people would write to me about them and say, oh, that's my experience. That's what I want when I'm writing.
Here's a poem for today by Maria Mazziotti Gillan. My father was a young man then. Only 16 when he came from Italy, alone, moved into the Riverside neighborhood full of Italians from Cilento, all of whom spoke the same dialect, so it was as though they'd transported those mountain villages to Paterson.
I went to school, I didn't speak English, so when I got to school, I loved hearing books read out loud in English because my parents couldn't do that. And so I fell in love with the way English sounded. I loved Italian. Italian was the language we spoke at home, but I loved the sound of English in poetry. My first job was in the Paterson Public Library. We shelved books, and I was fast. And I'd fly up the steps. Of course, I was really thin and young, and I would fly up those steps. I'd finish shelving the books, and then I'd read for about 10 minutes. Don't tell Miss Cherry. And there were the wonderful, wonderful poetry collection. And it was an education in itself just to be in those stacks and reading those books. It was an amazing experience for me.
Maria moved away to college and a new life, like the children of so many other immigrants. But years later, after marrying and having children, she came back to Paterson.
I came back because it seemed to me that it was a place that needed poetry more than anything, more than I needed to get away.
She got a job teaching literature at Passaic County Community College and soon started a poetry center there. It grew and now attracts audiences and poets from all over. This reading featured Billy Collins, the best-selling former U.S. Poet Laureate.
When I started the Poetry Center, people said, who is going to come to Paterson for poetry? Nobody's coming there. They're not going to come there. And I think I proved them wrong because officially we started in 1980, and so it's 38 years it's been going on. I try to encourage my students to think of their hand and the pen as something that's carrying a message from their subconscious, which is down here for me. I guess I'm very Italian. I think it's in your belly, and there's a cave there, and you have to be willing to excavate it and find out what's there. And you never know what's going to come back to you. I used the tablecloths and linens in all the years of our marriage when we had company or on holidays, and after we'd eaten together in my dining room, my mother would take them home to wash and iron and bring them back white and starched and pristine. My mother died 22 years ago, my husband in 2010. But today I open the drawer where I keep the lace tablecloths and linens and see my husband and me as a young couple, my husband handsome with his high cheekbones and gray eyes. My mother, father, sister still alive and vibrant. Our children and our nieces and nephews all there. I see in the lace pattern the pattern of our lives, the way it winds in and out, connecting all who came before, love and marriage and grief woven into the threads, and know that all the people I have loved are tucked away carefully in my mind so I can lift them out and remember and be comforted.